Okay, welcome to part 17 of our Napoleon Total War Sea Battle and Napoleon Total War. This is a 3 versus 3 fleet action. Small funds, large unit, westerly wind. And first upwind, myself with 4 48-gun heavy frigates. In the center is Rambo with an additional 4 48-gun heavy frigates. And downwind, coming up on port, with 2 80-gun ship of the lines. We're all flying the Royal Portuguese flag. And let's go over and take a look at our opponents. Downwind is a Spanish squadron. Looks like leading is an 80-gun ship of the line, and then a 64 gunner, and finally bringing up the rear a 38-gun light frigate. In the center, a British squadron with 4 48-gun Razies heavy frigates. And finally upwind, now sailing downwind, is another British squadron with 2 80-gun ship of the lines. Let's take a look at the battle space. Our opponent's sailing downwind and to the south-southeast. And we have maneuvered upwind. And to open up the engagement, a salvo from the British 80 onto one of Rambo's heavy frigates, and he fires back with 2 of his frigates on the 80s. Port is still downwind, and he's beating upwind to try to hook up with us. Normal engagement here. The Spanish and the British Razies seem to be too far and out of the action. They haven't formed a real line. Looks like Rambo has come about, and there's Port's 80s in a blocking position now, which forces our opponents downwind, so the 2 80s, British 80s, go downwind. Port's 2 Portuguese 80s now have come up into and then the British 80s fire chain shot at Port's 80s. It's a chain shot fight here between the 80s. Oh, I hear a mast going down, and Port looks like, yes, and he loses a mizzen mast on one of his 80 gunner ship of the lines. And the British 80s have been turned downwind. Port now is right next to Rambo. I am out to the north now, and beginning our circling maneuver while Port and Rambo fights it out with the vanguard of the British squadron. And now the Spanish come up on line. Looks like the Spanish 80 gunner now is leading the line. And the engagement really starts in earnest now. There we go. Nice shot of the line here. And now my ship's out to the north. Slowly sailing around. Let's take a different view of this. I'm making the encircling maneuver while Rambo and Port maintain the upwind line. And it looks like the British Razies now are up against my heavy frigates, an even match, but they're not in a good firing position. They don't have all their guns online, and that's a costly mistake. My frigates are pounding away at them. I don't know how long they're going to last like that. They have to get into line firing position, and now I've been able to turn them downwind a bit So it looks like both ends of our opponent's line have been turned. Port now is in the center of the line. There's his 80 with the lost mizzen. Now Rambo has continued to move south with his line, which actually brought the rest of the Spanish and the other British squadron, the 280 gunners along with him.
Now we shall see.
And that's isolated. That has isolated the 4 British Razes, so Port and I can work on them. Rambo now seems to be coming about to go back up, heading back up to the north, so he can meet with our line. Now we begin our semicircle encirclement, one of our standard moves. And we have all of our guns online. And it looks like the British Razes are in big trouble now, all bunched up, not able to fire at who they need to fire at. Not all their guns are online. They're falling away, trying to repair. Our ships maintain a steady speed. I'm off to the east and starting to turn them to begin a full encirclement. Meanwhile, Rambo has come about and he is heading east. And boy, this is a withering fire on these British Razes. They're falling away downwind. Oh, and an explosion. Oh gosh, it looks like one of the British 80s has been destroyed. Now, Rambo now is almost up with us. He'll be able to assist and completely cut off the British Razes. They do have a way out of this to the south if they can start that maneuver, but it doesn't look like they're going to take advantage of that escape route. So meanwhile, the remaining British 80 gunner is going to come to the aid. It looks like he's in the vanguard with the Spanish and the relief force coming up from the south. And they're reaching up from the south to try to relieve these British Razes, but it doesn't look too good. Now I've hove to. I am to the southeast, hove to, firing. I don't want to get too close to the British 80 and the Spanish squadron. Now Rambo has been able to come about, and let's see if he can lead away those Spanish ships. The British 80 has come to the aid of the Razes to try to coax them into coming down online with the Spanish squadron. Rambo's frigates now have come about and are bound west-northwest, upwind. And the Spanish, it looks like the Spanish have taken the bait and are being led away by Rambo's heavy frigates away from the action. So that leaves Port and myself to finish off the Razes, the British Razes, and their 180 gunner. It looks like one Razee has surrendered and is sinking. It's going down by her port side. Those Razes are tough ships.
Now we shall see their true colors.
And they lose their commander. The Razee lose their commander as another Razee begins the retreat. I don't know what this other Razee is doing. In the east, he's just walking right into all that fire. Very unfortunate. So it looks like there's 3 Razees out of action, 1 Razee left. The 80 gunner has come about now and is pointing into the wind, trying to hook up with the Spanish squadron. Meanwhile, we unmercifully pound, and he starts to retreat, the British Razee. So it looks like the Razees are just about done. There is one that is retreating who may come back. One of the Razees is sinking on the port side, laid over, and he's done. Meanwhile, Rambo has led the Spanish squadron away, which allowed us to do so much damage. We have to stay online. And here's the action with Rambo. He's taking quite a beating himself. That's the Spanish 80 gunner up forward in the vanguard, followed by the Spanish 64 gunner and then the 38 gun light frigate. And following behind it looks like one of the, I guess that's the 80 gun British. But it may be one of the Razies that came back. Either one of the British 80s went down. I'm not sure if it was a Razie or that 80. We'll see in a moment here. This is a good line fight. Rambo's lead frigate now turns downwind, tries to come down to the south, and he turns to cap. All right, it looks like the Spanish 80 gunner is going down and has surrendered. It's going down by our starboard side. Yep, and everybody's abandoning, and that's it for the 80 gun Spaniard. Second in line is the Spanish 64 gunner trying to get around his sinking squadron mate. But he's been capped by Rambo, and it looks like Rambo has lost a Razie. That's also sinking. Rambo's lost his heavy frigate, and she's going down in his surrender, so Rambo's down to 3 ships, heavily damaged, all 3. Yes, and that is a British Razie who's lost a mizzenmast, who's tailing Charlie in this fight. And it looks like we've finished off everybody else. And Port, myself, yes, we're sailing up to assist Rambo to finish off the remainder of the Spanish. The tailing Charlie Razie now has, he looks like he's retreating. Boy, this 64 Spaniard is really fighting it out now. Rambo's pretty damaged, but he's doing a good job trying to stop this line. Gives me a chance. I am off to the southwest or southeast, coming online to fire. I should get a shot in on the little 38. Oh, and that the British Razie has made a comeback, but now it's retreating again after a salvo from one of my heavy frigates. Wow, this is tough. And it looks like that's going to be just about it. Only the 38 remains. The 64 Spaniard has surrendered. The 38 remains. That looks like it's going to end any minute here. We have one more ship left, and that's it. And thank you very much for watching. Don't forget to subscribe. We'll see you next time. Obrigado. Ciao.